how did you find to make, was each course success after success, or was there something that you really had to follow that made your courses successful?
So the first course I created, and so I'm going to preface this by saying how you'd go about creating a course today might differ a little bit from the way that I started then, but
Hmm.
not much. So here's why. The first course I created was purely based off of like a shot in the dark, but there was some strategy. I think I thought like, okay, first of all, what can I teach? Because you can't just like teach something you don't know. It doesn't make sense. You'll be a bad
Right.
teacher, it won't make sense, and people will see through your BS. So I was like, what do I know? And what can I teach? I was like, well, web design, that's all I know. Like I just know how to design stuff and code stuff. So, and I can do it well. Like I fancied myself a pretty good, designer and front end developer. I mean, I was able to go full time without having to ever really work a full time job for more than a year.
Yeah.
So I was like, I can teach that. And I was like, and I can teach that pretty well, I think, because I don't know, like I can be animated and I like being on video and I'm not afraid to perform and kind of put that on. So yeah, I can teach that. So I was like, okay, well, what am I going to teach? What do I want to know? Or what do I want to teach?
Right.
And so what I did was, and this is where I think it still applies today, is what if I were to start over again and teach me like web design, what would I teach myself? Like what would I want to take and how would I want to do it? So I looked back to when I was learning web design and I had to like I went to college and the instructors were good and they gave us good examples. Um, but to accelerate that, like I was like addicted to it. I wanted to get really good at design. I loved it as soon as I started coding, as soon as I started designing, and I was like, this is amazing. This is so good. I like looked to tutorials and like the way you found tutorials then, like 2009 and 10 was like through forums and maybe there was a YouTube video, blogs. It was like not as good. Like it wasn't as good as now.
Yeah.
And it was so boring. It was so bad. It was so boring. And I remember one tutorial where somebody provided an end like a design and said, "This is the design we're going to build." And it to me, to my eyes at that time, it was like really nice. And I didn't know how I was going to possibly make that.
Yeah.
And the promise was, you'll make this by the end of this tutorial. So I took the tutorial and I made that thing. And I was like, oh, that's amazing. And it just blew my mind. So I was like, I want to do that for somebody, but better. Not just like a blog tutorial. I want a video course and I'm going to show them the best design at the time that I can make. I'm going to design it and I'm going to say to the student, by the end of this course, you're going to be able to make that. And I want them to not believe it. I want them to be like, it's impossible. It's not going to
Mm.
happen because I suck so bad, or I'm so new, or I'm not a designer. Like it can't happen. And then I go on to perform like a David Blaine style magic trick of showing them how to make it. And by the end of it, their minds are blown and they are completely head over heels for my style of teaching. And that was my theory. And that's what happened. It was like I created a great design at the time and I walked them through every step in a fun way, in an animated way. I made jokes, I did all this sort of stuff. And it like became really popular. And
Yeah.
then that's how I created the first course. Now, subsequent products came as a result of listening to the students. So I would benchmark that off of what I wanted to teach. So if someone was like, show me how to do hardcore Python, I was like, you can go Python somewhere else because this guy has no desire to
No
teach you
Python
Python.
here.
No
We
Pythons
don't do
here.
snakes.
Yeah, we're not snake biting anyone today. So I would listen to the feedback and I would find out people would be like, oh, I wish I knew how to make a dynamic site, like how do I make this static HTML site into something where I can like have it dynamic, like with like this thing called WordPress. And so I like went and learned WordPress, which benefited my web design services, like my freelancing, because now I started offering WordPress services and charged way more money because I realized how much better it was than static sites. And so then I started teaching PHP and WordPress. And this thing called Bootstrap came along, Twitter Bootstrap, which is just Bootstrap now, for responsive sites, and responsive design became popular. So I would look at what's the market doing? So dynamic sites, responsive sites. And what do I like? It's like design and front end development, building sites and teaching people how to do that. And what do people want? It was like, okay, a couple other things over here, but also, how do I make a responsive WordPress site that looks good? Because I took this tutorial and the guy drones on and he puts me to sleep and it's boring as all hell. And the site doesn't even look good, but he's a smart programmer. I was like, okay, well, I can be way more animated, way more exciting, design a way better site, and show them how to design a beautiful WordPress site with Bootstrap. And it's responsive. And so then that blew up. And then I created another course, and then that one was a dud. And so then I tried this other thing. And so it was all about listening to the students, getting the feedback, benchmarking it with what do I want to teach and do, and what is the market saying as well. Put that together, you mix it all up in a pot, and then you kind of get a direction. And so that's how I approached all the courses. That's how I approached pretty much everything that I do, even from services to coaching to, community building. It's like, what do people say they want? What do I want? And what does the market want? Put that together, find the overlap, and that's what you focus on.
I love. I can't say it any better. It's like that trifecta. Is finding what that nice balance is, and being able to put it out there. And not only that, but it's like your keyboard is very quiet, sir.
Did you not hear that?
That was very impressive. I didn't hear anything. If I type, it's like everybody just died in our chat right there. But what's we call it? Yeah, I think it's no. That's part of the conversation. Mm-hmm. This is a live conversation for good things, happiness, and etc. But
I think you were saying listening to the students, looking at the market, looking at what you want to do, and I looked at that overlap, and that's what I created.
Yeah, it's like the overlap, but also like the volume game, where it's just like you are getting better at creating courses just because you're creating courses, but also through the research that you're doing. And I think that is probably the biggest. It's like the volume thing. Like, for example, you were just like, let me go ahead and try, creating these courses. And nobody was really, your wife was like, hey, try this out. But there was nothing that was like, yes, this 100% is the answer. Because it could have totally, there's people where it's, they try it once and their first one might have been the dud. Yeah. And they'd have been like, oh, this sucks. This doesn't work. But like going back to that, volume thing, it's super important to like, everybody's expected to suck, but because we don't want to suck for a long period of time in order to get better at something, I think that's a little difficult.
Yeah. No, it's true. It's like, and I just shared in the chat there because Kimberly was like, can you share that first course with us? That would be great to see. Now, I shared the link not to be like, go buy it, because I would suggest you buy one of my newer courses, not that old one. But I wanted to show you, because like what you were saying there, Brandon, was like, you put in the reps, you put in the time, and you get better at it. Like that first course, it's embarrassing. It's embarrassing for me to see now. Like I'm not going to knock it, because that was a very important milestone, and it's impacted a lot of people, and it's impacted me and my family. So if it weren't for like that course, then I wouldn't be here talking about this stuff. I'd probably be working at a studio as like a front-end developer still or something. Right. So it's like, I look at it and I go, wow. Like I was doing video, I was creating content, and I was teaching web design. That's what I'm doing today. But the difference is so much. It's so much different. The level that I'm at, the impact that I get to experience, the joy, it's just a different league.
Yeah.
So I can't compare it because it wouldn't be fair. But I see like, it's like that's what you put in the time, you put in the reps. If you're afraid to start something, if you're afraid to create something, if you have a course idea and you want to publish it to augment your freelancing, but you're like, I'm awkward on camera, then you're like, okay, well, if you don't start today, you're not going to get that awkwardness out of the way, and you're going to wait, and you're still going to be awkward that day one. So why don't you just start now and just be weird at first, and you'll get better as you put in the reps.
I hope you guys liked this episode. If you did, you can find more build from scratch website tutorials with me right here, or you can find more Editor X tips and tricks in this playlist over here. With that said, I hope to see you guys in another video. And of course, if you liked this episode and what we're doing here on this channel, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next one.